Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season, and I'm still into doing winter crafts. So before Christmas, I did a tag with this die from Spellbinders called Winter Welcome Sled. I'm just going to use the skates and some of the greenery from it, and I'm also using the bow die from the Parcel and Post as well as the Sparkling Snow 3D embossing folder. So I'm just going to do a swag with the skates hanging down from it. Before I do any of that, I'm going to emboss my cardstock. Now, when I use a 3D embossing folder, I like to mist both sides of the cardstock lightly with some water. It just softens the fibers of that paper, pushing it into those 3D embossing folders a little bit better. So then I need to let it dry. Because I've misted it with water, I don't want to be crafting with it while it's still slightly damp. Now I missed it, it is slightly moist, it is not sopping wet, so we're not making it super wet here, we're just moistening it just a little bit, so when it comes out of that folder, it's just a little bit damp. I'm putting my other two panels through the embossing folder, and then I'm going to set those aside to dry as well. Now, rather than just creating a plain A2 card with just the fold on the left-hand side, I decided to do a gatefold card just to vary it up a little bit. You could do this entire design on just a plain card front as well. You just wouldn't have the two panels for the front of your card. Now, I have all my pieces for my greenery die cut, but because we're creating a winter card, I thought it would be nice if they look a little bit icy, a little bit frosty. So I have my Versamark pad here, and I'm using frosted crystal embossing powder. It's a different kind of embossing powder. It doesn't have a glossy look. It has a frosted look to it. So I'm pressing my die cuts into the Versamark pad, and yes, I know my Versamark pad is looking very old and ugly right now. It still works, it still does the job, it's just not looking very pretty. Once I have that inked, I'm tapping it into the frosted crystal embossing powder. Easiest way to do that is just have a piece of scrap paper with that powder in a mound on top of it, press it into the Versamark pad, and then press it into that powder just to coat it. And then you can hold that little piece in a pair of tweezers while heat embossing it. It's the easiest way to do it and the fastest way to do it, just assembly line. I also have the twigs from that same die set. I'm going to do that same frosted crystal embossing powder over that as well. I only did 2 of the twigs and I did a bunch of the greenery. The twigs themselves, I think they're supposed to be the spine part of the holly, and I didn't want to do a holly or do the holly on this card because it's not a Christmas holiday card. It's more of a winter looking card. Once I have all of those pieces embossed, I can put the excess frosted crystal embossing powder into that package and then put it to the side. I die cut all of my pieces off screen, so I have all the pieces here in order to assemble my skates. I have some light gray background, the white for the front, and then some glossy silver for the blades of the skates. Easiest way to glue these pieces together is to hold the die cuts in a set of tweezers while applying the glue. And I just have Barely Art glue here. I have it in a very fine squeeze bottle so that it has a really fine tip to it, and I can put as little as much or as much as I want on there. Once I have those two on there, I can put dots of glue on the die cut blades for the skate, and I like to put an acrylic block on top of my die cuts while they're drying. It just frees up my hands and keeps everything nice and flat while it's drying. It makes sure that things don't curl up. Sometimes when you use a liquid glue, it starts to curl up a little bit, and by doing this, I can make sure it stays nice and flat and nothing starts to curl up at all. And I really only need to have that acrylic block on there for, I want to say maybe 30 seconds or so. This glue starts to bond and starts to hold that cardstock really quite quickly, so it doesn't need to be on there for very long. It's not going to be completely dry, but it's going to be just enough so that it's held in place, and it will just hold that paper till it's completely dry. You do want to make sure that it's a little bit drier than I had done there. That blade flipped to the front, but it was easy enough to fix. Once those skates are done, I'm going to set them aside to dry. My embossed cardstock here, I'm just going to glue that to my mat. I'm going to do an oval shape on the front of the card with my skates and my pine swag on top of it. And then the 2 panels for the side of my gatefold card, I have a craft outline that is cut at 2 1/8 by 5 1/2 inches, which I've got 2 of those pieces, and then I've got a white one that is 2 inches by 5 3/8. So those have just really, really tiny mats around them, and that's going to cover the whole front of the card. So we're not going to actually see the base of the card. While those things are drying, I'm going to start assembling my die cuts. First thing is to hang those skates exactly where I want them to go, and I'm only putting my acrylic block on the bottom so that I can start assembling my pine branches on the top. Now I only put the glue on the bottom half of the center pine or center spine of my pine branches. If you want to glue the entire thing down, you absolutely can. I don't necessarily find I really need to. I like the dimension I start to get when I only glue down the center part of it, and I like the fact that I can keep moving and adjusting things as I go. And by only having that glue in the center part of that pine branch, I don't necessarily worry about having glue all over my project as I'm tweaking things and moving things around. I've never really found it to be an issue to not have everything 100% glued down. This is meant just to get to the recipient. It doesn't need to travel far and through a whole lot of hands. So this is how I've always done it, and I really like how it looks in the end. So for the last little bit of my arrangement here, I've got some more pine branches, but I don't need to use the entire piece. I just rip them in half or rip parts off of it depending on how big I want them to be. The part that I ripped off is the base of the stem, and everything is pointed towards where I'm going to have the bow covering everything. So you're never going to know that it was ripped, but it gives different sizes to these branches and makes it look like you don't have all exactly the same branch in there. Just gives it a little bit more interest. Once I have everything in there, and the last 2 pieces that I put there were those twigs, I'm going to die cut the center of the bow. Now that was the parcel and post die there. There's a really pretty branch that has some berries on it that I think also would be nice on this design. I didn't want to use them because I was trying to keep a fairly simple and neutral color scheme to it, but I think they would be a nice addition as well. I've got my scoreboard out here, and I'm using my Teflon bone folder, and what I was just showing there is how much of a difference the point has. I like the Teflon one much better. It's got a much more precise point to it. My Score-Pal one has warped and changed shape over the years. I have a piece of 5.5 by 8.5 inch cardstock here that I scored at 2 1/8 inch from each one of the short sides, so that when I fold those to the center, the card size is 5.5 by 4 1/4. I'm going to glue those 2 panels to the front, and I want to make sure that the edge of my cardstock matches the edge of the center point of that panel. I don't want them overlapping when I close my card, and the easiest way to do that is to put them on there and just look at the other side of it and make sure that you're not seeing any of that piece of cardstock overlapping there. Once again, I put my acrylic block on there to hold it in place, and then I'm going to glue my oval. But when I glue my oval, I'm only putting glue on the side that is going to touch the left side of the card when you're looking at it, and it's going to just be glued to that one side of the card so that I can open it as a gatefold card. Other than that line from the mat in the center, it doesn't really look much different from a regular A2 card. It just has a bit more of a unique fold to it. I didn't add any sentiments to this, but you could easily stamp a sentiment in the center of the card there. Typically, I wait until I'm handing the card out before doing this. I hope you enjoyed watching the process of this coming through, and I hope you're enjoying a lovely winter season. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you being here. Have a great day.